Hi, my name is Dave Reske, CEO of Now Speed Marketing, and welcome to the edition of Marketing in the Now, where we talk about the best ideas in digital marketing and marketing strategy. And my guest today is Dimitri Vlachos, CMO of Spacelift. Dimitri is a marketing leader with over 15 years of experience in both startups and established corporations. He's been CMO or VP of marketing at companies like Spacelift, Brinka, Devo, Riverbend, and others. Dimitri, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dave. Great to be here.
You've had some amazing experiences. What's your favorite type of company to work on?
That's an interesting question. When you say what type, I mean all types. I've been ground floor, first person in marketing. I've run groups as, for $250 million business units, 30 people teams. So it's been a range. And I don't really have, I'd say, like a favorite stage time. I do like building and getting the team in place and then taking that team as far as we can go. That's kind of how I look at it.
Awesome. Well, we're going to talk a lot about that today, so that's a great approach. And tell me a little bit about Spacelift. Are you guys? I confess I don't know a lot about the company. So what's the company all about?
Yeah. So we help DevOps and platform teams, that are sitting in managing infrastructure for whether it's in the cloud or on premises, who are kind of spinning up and managing different types of infrastructure for applications and modern application architectures. So we really help them orchestrate and streamline the way they manage those pipelines. So that's really what we're doing. So they can ship faster and bring faster, technology faster to market while ensuring they have all the controls they need for security and compliance and all the types of, you know, stringent requirements they have to do things right.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like a great company, a great venture for you to be part of. So you and I have been talking about pipeline,
Yeah.
and we're going to explore some of the aspects of building pipeline today. And it's a really important topic because I bet every day, every company's CEO, CMO, and CRO are thinking about pipeline, right? You're always kind of focused on that. So just want to explore that topic with you today and just ask you, maybe just to start and tell our audience, what does it mean to build pipeline? What are we talking about when we talk about that?
So, I mean, what is pipeline, right? Pipeline is kind of, I almost look at it as the currency by which, the sales team and marketing teams are really working together on. And, when it comes, there's a few, people talk about there's nothing, there's two things you're guaranteed of, right? Death and taxes. I think there's another one when you're working in, especially B2B marketing or sales or startups. It's, the saying of we always need more pipeline, right? No matter where you are, people always say they need more. And so pipeline's really kind of a measurement of how much opportunity there is for a company to, close in terms of sales opportunity. So, and there's different stages, right? There's a lot of discussion of, well, is all pipeline the same? When do you really consider something pipeline? When do sales consider it something they really look at and say that's something we really can work and close now versus it's very early and not quite qualified for us to really start bringing into our forecast. I mean, that's what pipeline's all about.
Yeah. So it's really building demand, really like all through the funnel in a way that sales can identify those opportunities and their specific deals that they can see at different stages of the buying process.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring up demand. There's been a lot of talk recently about, I mean, I always find it interesting when you look at marketing discussions, whether LinkedIn and in communities. Unfortunately, in the CMO world, a lot of it is just almost therapy session. Everyone, saying how hard marketing is, and sure, it is. And I think a lot of jobs are hard. But I think what's really interesting, there's a particular debate right now about brand, versus pipeline.
Mm.
And hey, is marketing really being pushed or CMOs really being pushed to be so short-sighted in terms of their focus to just what pipeline do you need for next quarter? And I really think a couple of things around this topic. One, you have to be able to converse, manage, discuss pipeline as a marketer. It has to be the way you're really talking to the rest of the company. And sure, there's a lot how do you build the demand, the interest, the engagement with prospects, the awareness to get people to the stage where the rest, especially sales and the CEO view it as, are you delivering the pipeline we need to get to our goals? And so that's one way to talk about it, but there's a lot that goes into even getting people who want to be in your pipeline, right?
Mhm.
The idea that you're going to bring people who don't want to be interested in your product, interested in your brand, looking to solve a problem that you solve into your pipeline, like that's not going to happen, right? They has to be a need. You have to find those people who have that need. And then I think the difference in some ways between demand generation and pipeline is really how do you get people interested? Then how do you move them further into the pipeline where that interest, that manifestation of intent and need turns into more and more signals that I'm ready to buy. And
Yeah.
it's like there's multiple parts to it. And so I don't prescribe to this idea that CMOs and marketing are being demanded to be short-sighted. I think there's a lot of pressure on marketers to deliver pipeline. And part of the job of a CMO is to deal with that pressure and figure out how do you balance the things you need to do in the short term uh, to find interest right now, but also how do you build long-term brand and other strategies to continue to build your awareness for future buyers. So I think it's a careful balance, but I don't think it's one or the other.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I really like what you said about the CMO accepting responsibility for pipeline, because I think that many CMOs, maybe in the past, let's go back a few years, thought their job was really about brand strategy, maybe demand gen, maybe advertising, PR, thought about those other aspects of marketing, and were a little annoyed, frankly, that they were forced to focus on pipeline. But you're saying, CMOs just need to step up, understand it's part of their responsibility, and own it, and own that pipeline responsibility.
I would also flip it a little. Like this is a very B2B thing in some ways. If you look at consumer goods, marketing usually owns the P&L.
Mhm.
Marketing owns setting tons of strategy. Marketing owns packaging, pricing, all the pieces of how you bring a product to market, how you actually sell it, how you position it. And in the B2B world, I think it's somewhat so fragmented that it's like, I'm just going to work on brand. Well, why are you working on brand? Right? I mean, you're working on brand because you want to get people aware, to trust you, to uh, become aware that you have a solution for their problem, like the brand, like the experience, make sure they have a holistic experience as they purchase. And so I think the idea that you can, really decouple brand, demand, PR from pipeline is that's the ultimate goal of all the stuff you're doing is to attract customers and or attract prospects and turn them into customers.
So, if we unpack that a little bit, is there really a difference between the tactics that you're using to build pipeline, the tactics that you're doing for demand gen and brand building, or is it really all the same? Or are you
Well,
really
I don't,
thinking specifically when you're building pipeline, you're thinking about a different tactic, a different strategy?
well, no, I think some of that depends on where you are in the stage of building your marketing engine, right? So I've come into places and it's like we need pipelines. Well, we don't have any of the mechanisms to make people aware we're there, to find people who are interested and start to engage them, then further engage them with more specifics about what we do, then work them down. So it's you've got to have those multiple pieces to go from, hey, someone's interested. You mentioned before people didn't want to talk about pipeline. And the typical way people talk about that, is like, well, leads are dead, MQLs are dead, right? This idea of just, oh, I got someone, they did something. Like, is that pipeline? Is that intent? It's the beginnings of it. And you can't stop working to get people engaged with you. But how do you actually start to look at your programs of are you delivering prospects, companies that are showing intent and moving further down the process to want to purchase. I think that's part of the focus. So, for example, I've been in companies where you walk in and they're like, hey, we have a sales goal, but there's no idea of what pipeline do you need to get to that sales goal. And it's like, hey, we need pipeline now. Well, that's not going to happen, right? So there is some, it's very hard to just go produce pipeline out of nowhere. And that's where people start to, they'll spend money on inefficient programs to get to yield some pipeline. It's getting your engine to start producing pipeline, is a longer term game. But once it's going, you need to keep tactically focused on short term pipeline, and you need to continue to build the brand programs, the PR, and the other pieces that feed longer term pipeline, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in a healthy company, like if you're walking into a healthy company or you're in a healthy company, you've got the pipeline is all there. You've got people who are kind of entering there's people who are just aware, learning about you, awareness. Then there's people who are kind of engaging with figuring out, the problem. And then there's people who are further down the buying process. And then you got like a big proposals that are going out and then things are ready to close. And so you have like people at all phases of the buying process. You've got proposals outstanding, you've got things ready to close. So a healthy company has got all of that happening really at the same time. And that's what you're talking about. You've got a pipeline, you've got all these things happening, right? Talk to me about what happens when maybe, let's say, maybe not a startup, but early stage company. Early stage companies often they rely on the salespeople or maybe the CEO or the executive team with their network to kind of sell and they're kind of working things, but they don't really have the pipeline built, right? So they
Yep.
don't have that, they don't have companies or people at all stages like moving through on a regular basis, right? Converting from one stage to another, right? They don't have the demand gen engine. So where do you start? Like let's say it's say it's a multi-million dollar company. They've got, some deals and they've kind of existed based on the network and the board and, they're
Yep.
and your job is now build pipeline. Where do you start? Like, how do you help them get going?
So, yeah, what I've always started with is, often when you walk into a situation like that, I'm always surprised how a lot of times people don't really know why their customers are buying,
Hmm.
right? So I almost always start with I will go interview 10 to 15 customers, um, and spend a good amount of time understanding what their perspective is. Uh, Inevitably, when that happens, I connect with 3 or 4 or 5 customers that I become very close with. And I will often use them to start to build some early programs around whether they're webinars or interviews or starting to get your customers, really internalize that messaging, or the why of their buying and how we should be talking about that. And so if you walk into a situation like you just proposed, I normally see a couple of things. One, there's not a lot of activities that are talking at the customer's language. Don't have various types of engagements or campaigns that can meet people at different stages. And so to me, it's like you got to start with the basics. Hey, let's get a customer or two out there talking for us, learn, take that content, do a webinar, do an interview, cut that up, start using it, start to figure out who do you want to get out there as your spokespeople. Like more and more now, can you have whether it's a thought leader or your founders out starting to talk on LinkedIn, on other platforms about, hey, here's what, not about the company per se, but really about the market, what they're seeing in the market, what types of challenges they've lived. And I think having that come from a founder builds a lot of authenticity, of your market. So starting to build those types of like genuine touches and understanding to your market. And then you start to scale around that. Okay, now, what are digital programs you can do? How do you start building? We have a really good blog engine going right now, and that's shifting as you see a lot of this shifting to Perplexity and Chat GPT. And, we're starting to see that traffic come up. We've been kind of stabilizing and really managing our traditional, SEO type search. So how do you build that type of interest? And can you become an area where your prospects come to learn about the market, not only learn about you as a product? I think
Yeah.
that's a longer term game. So if you walk into something of, hey, I think part of it that's a hard job for a CMO, depending on how experienced they are, is walking and saying, I know we have this glut. I'm not going to be able to fix it overnight. Here are the things I'm going to be doing. Do you have the right team in there to actually go do it? Um, so, and then there's the other pieces of how do you make sure you can squeeze every drop of juice out of kind of every opportunity that comes through. And that's where you start to look, okay, we have this opportunity. It's past the sales. If it wasn't a good engagement, what do we do with it? Do we pass it back and re-engage them in marketing? Is it the wrong people? Like, how do you not just, here's the opportunity, we passed it to sales, and everyone, it drops through, through the ether because, well, it wasn't a great fit or it was a great demo, but they're not really interested now. Like, how do you not, instead of focusing on just brand new leads all the time, as you build this database, you have people who have fallen through the cracks. They should be a focus too. So those are some of the motions I start to look at as you build up.
That's awesome. So yeah, so you're thinking about, that early awareness, the demand gen. I like the, eventually becoming the company that the place that the people go to learn about the market and the product. And then you're also supporting the sales effort in different ways all the way through. But that's a lot to do, right? So it's a lot of pieces. That's, modern marketing today is a lot of pieces. Do you have like one or two go-to strategies? Like you kind of say, hey, what's your email list like? Or let's do a webinar, or
Yeah, I mean,
let's get out on LinkedIn
I'm
and
a
let's get a
firm
CEO.
believer of if you want to get, lift off the ground and you've webinars with customers you find 3 or 4 customers, you do 3 or 4 types of panel discussions. Current customers love that. You find new customers. That's a great way to get people interested externally. You start to carve that up. I believe getting customers to engage in real discussion about your market in a webinar format is great. And then you can take that, create content from it. I've gotten customers to come and like write stuff with us. So it's all about building, for me, a key strategy is building really good connections with some customers early on, the ones who love what you're doing, right? If you can't find people who love what you're doing, then that's a little scary.
Yeah.
Like, I've always been able to find a number of customers like, oh my God, I love what you guys, I'll do whatever how can I help? That's an indication of a product that has real value. If you walk in a company and you don't find that, that becomes really scary because then you're trying to prop up and just, it's not genuine match and interest. And people call that product, I don't care if you call it product market fit or what have you. If you don't have customers who are really seeing value from your product, that's a red flag.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So that's kind of the early stage and some of your go-to strategies in building pipeline. But talk to me about the other stage. Let's say you're working with more like a 50 million or $100 million company, and you've got a team, you've got programs. As a CMO, what are you thinking about then in the pipeline? You've got systems, you've got dozens of salespeople, maybe you've got a whole engine out there. What are you thinking about as a CMO? And then CRO still says they want pipeline, but like what are you thinking about then?
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think there's a couple things you're thinking about then that are a little different. One, um, you're really thinking about how do you have programs for people who are net new into your funnel, if you will. Well, how do you have programs for people that are later in the funnel that you want to engage with? How do you kind of align tightly territorially with sales? Like one of the things that can, especially as you get to that 50 million, right? How do you make sure you're tightly aligned with where are we focused in terms of geographies? Where are we focused in terms of target market? Is it enterprise, like different segments? And I like to get, really up close agreement. We're going to do, I don't know, 60% in North America, 40% in EMEA. We're focusing this much on large enterprises, this much on, new upsell from current accounts. Get that written down and agreed upon. So I've been in situations where, you're halfway through the year and the sales leader's like, oh, we're hiring 7 people in EMEA. We need pipeline. It's like, whoa, I don't have anything structured around that. Why are we even going to EMEA? Like you want to be involved in that discussion. You want to have a relationship with your CRO or sales lead, whatever you want to call them, that the two of you are really working together on, here's our number we want to get to next year. How are we going to get there? What's the right mix? What's the right targets? What are the right programs? That's where you want to get to. So then your marketing plan aligns to that. Those are some of the bigger shifts I think you see. I mean, you should be doing that even at 20 million, but you have to have a lot of, some of the building blocks going before you get there. So that's one area I think is really tight alignment and holding others accountable around you in the go-to-market team. Well, we said we're going here. I like to use the phrase like, here's our plan. We can change it, but it kind of takes an act of God. Like you have to come and say, this is why we're changing. There's a real reason. Fine, we can change, but you can't flip it without informing the rest of the team. So that's one area. I think the other area is as you get to scale, and even, when you're smaller, but especially at scale, it's like, okay, you've got closed loss deals. You've got a lot of opportunities that are sitting that you touched before, and there tends to be a real focus on let's go get new leads, new leads, new leads, new leads, not looking at our current customer base, our current, opportunities that 6 months ago came to us and didn't come to fruition. What are they doing?
Mm.
Right? Let's read. How do you have a program to systematically and regularly re-reach and engage them?
Yeah.
Those are some of the things that I look at as you start to scale.
So you're thinking about specific programs for specific opportunities, whether it's geographic expansion, sales opportunities, specific target markets, and you're thinking comprehensively about all of that, so you're trying to take advantage of all your opportunities.
And it might be, by the way, that you say, you know what? I know we want to do 60% in North America, 40% in EMEA. I've only got resources to go after that 60%. So I'm not going to focus on EMEA. You're kind of on your own. How we like you want to have that level of conversation that you're upfront and saying, I have resource, either I don't have the resource to do this and I need more resource, or if I'm not going to get it, where do you want me to focus? And where do you not want me to focus? So it's very important to have that level of conversation.
Yeah, so let's expand on that just a little bit more. So that seems like that requires a lot of trust between the CEO, the CRO, and the CMO to have that level of conversation. Because I can imagine a lot of finger pointing that comes in and says, "Hey, we told the board we're going to go here. You got to make it happen, right?" Or hey, my guys are suffering here. Why aren't you building pipeline so we can make our numbers, right? So how do you build that trust relationship between those three key leaders so that you can have those honest conversations and trust each other that you got each other's backs on that, so
Yep.
you can work
So
together.
I think there's a couple things. One, it comes with everyone just being honest in communication about it. It also, I mean, you're right. Look, it's not like you can say I'm not going to support anything in EMEA, or I keep saying EMEA just as an example. I'm not going to support this region, and I'm not going to do anything. The likelihood that that's going to go over well is not good, but it's more of a proxy for we're going to have these kind of different levels of campaigns, right? We're going to have this general campaign will turn on for this region, but we're going to go deeper in these target areas because you said we want to go after small enterprise or we wanted to go after, financial services. Like, so it's really building an agreement that this is the business model we think is going to get us to where we need. And then we're going to stick with it unless we see overwhelming data that it's not working and then shift. And I think as a CMO, you have to too often, I think marketing is pushed into the corner of here's what we need, just go do it versus no, I can't do that, or I don't have enough resource to do that, or here's how I think we should do it. Like some ways you just have to assert yourself at the table. Now that's taken me a while to get to, it's not like the first time I was a VP of marketing or CMO, I was that. And it's not like you walk in and act like you have all the answers. It's more you're a voice. Marketing needs to be a voice at the table, and you're the voice who has to be there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, as a digital agency, we get involved in some of those conversations.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting. It's a very different conversation when we're working with an established company with a proven product where we've got, let's say we're doing digital advertising, we've got really consistent cost per
Yeah.
opportunity that we can bank on. And another company that says, hey, it's a new product, new market. You have no idea what the conversion
Yeah.
rate's going to be or what the cost per lead or the cost per MQL or whatever is going to be. And you're sometimes still expected to try to pull a rabbit out of your hat and make it happen. And I think what you're saying is have those honest conversations go deep and find out what really is going to work, maybe before you make those commitments, and really figure out how to make those things happen. And it takes a strong leader to be able to do that.
And by the way, you still have to, in startups, the goals are very aggressive. And so you're never going to have all the answers. And everyone's signing up for things that you don't see the 100% clear path to. That's just the way it is. And so how do you just minimize the uncertainty to as much as you can is really what you're trying to do. So you can focus on what you think is going to work and use that where you think it's going to work best. That's really what it's about
Yeah. And
in my head.
that's
Yeah.
a lot of the fun of it too, right? So you're an expert at each person's an expert at their function, and you all work together to accomplish the goal of building that pipeline, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Dimitri, this has been a really good conversation about pipeline building. Thank you for that. You're clearly an expert in this area, and you've had a lot of experience. If someone in the audience wants to engage further with you in this, what's the best way to reach you?
They can hit me up on LinkedIn.
Okay.
It'd be the best way. And I can share, we can share my LinkedIn when you do that. But I think that'd be the best way. Hit me up on LinkedIn.
That's great. Well, thanks again for taking the time. It's been a great conversation.
Thanks, Dave. Great conversation with you as well. Thank you.